Welcome, folks. I can see some of you already starting to pile in. We're getting ready to talk about FOXChain for the next hour. Can someone confirm in the DAO stage chat that they can hear me okay? Thank you. All right, we are at 3:30. Um, so my name is Michael Perklin, and a few months ago I was elected the workstream leader for the FOXChain workstream. I see people are still streaming in. But I want to make sure that we have enough time for all the questions and answers that are going to be coming through. If you're just joining now, we have a presentation, some slides that are going to be broadcast via the ShapeShift Twitch stream. There's also a Zoom call that you can join, video only, where you can see the slides streamed. Take a look at the ShapeShift DAO stage, and you can click on either the Zoom link or the Twitch TV link to get a look at the slides. You should be seeing a unstarted Google slide deck at the moment. We're going to be having a variety of people up here talking about the work on FOXChain to date. A lot of this has been done in collaboration with Coinbase Cloud, and I can already see there are a number of Coinbase Cloud team members in the audience, as well as Alex, who is beside me here on stage. How's it going, Alex?
I'm good. How are you? Can you hear me?
Either I don't hear you or everybody can't hear you. Um, okay, I see people can hear Alex, but I can't. So I'm going to drop out and come right back because I want to make sure that I can hear anybody that's on stage. I'll be right back. Alex, would you mind saying something?
Can you hear me?
Okay, I'm going to check my outputs because I still don't hear you. It's not a proper stage chat unless somebody has technical difficulties, right? I've unplugged my headphones and I'm just going to use my regular laptop speaker, so it won't sound as good, but at least this way I think I'll be able to hear all of you.
How about now? Do you hear me,
I
Michael?
can hear you loud and clear, Alex. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, um, let's get started. This is going to be a very free form update. There's some information that I'd like to update all of you on by going through the very short slide deck that I've put together. But mostly, the point of this call is to hear feedback from all of you. So, when we get towards the end and I start asking a lot of questions, I'd love to hear your thoughts, either if you're willing to come up on stage and share your voice, or just by typing in the ShapeShiftDAO chat. This is a project that affects us all as members of the ShapeShiftDAO, so your voice is very important to me. And that's not just lip service. So with that, I'm gonna dive right into the deck, and there's only a short collection of slides, 24 of them. So we should get through pretty quickly, and then we can open it up to many more questions. Let's get started. Can everybody see the FOXChain starting slide? And I realize that I can't see the chat. Alex, if you could tell me what people are saying.
Let's see. I see some yups.
Great. So let's go through the agenda of today's call. We're going to go through a quick review of what is FOXChain, just in case there are any newer DAO members who have joined since the last FOXChain call and they want to understand what it is we're talking about. We'll talk about where we left off since the last time, where we are now, and what's next. Again, the point of this call is to gauge the community's feedback on the current direction. So the questions, comments, and suggestion section at the end will be the most important of this agenda. All right, a quick recap of what FOXChain is. It's a purpose-built blockchain designed to store metadata for every blockchain supported by ShapeShift. Now that's a mouthful. There's a lot of thick words in there, so let's unpack it. Right now, today, when you look at how ShapeShift works, everything runs on centralized servers. Whether you're using the ShapeShift mobile app on your phone, or you're using the ShapeShift.com web app in your favorite web browser, you are talking to a bunch of centralized servers that are run on AWS today. We've got a bunch of great Foxes supported by the Fox Foundation who are running these centralized servers on behalf of all of us, but everything is still trusting a set of centralized servers. Now, what are these centralized servers? There are two pieces in there. On the one hand, we've got a variety of blockchain daemons or blockchain servers. These are things like Bitcoin D, Geth, Litecoin D, Gaia D, Thorchain, etc. These run the blockchain clients and allow ShapeShift to talk to all these different blockchains. But aside from that, there's also a database for each of these blockchain daemons that indexes all the information in a way that makes it very fast to do queries. These databases are consulted every time you open the app. Your mobile phone asks, hey, what's my Bitcoin balance? What's my Litecoin balance? What's my Thorchain balance? And it talks to these databases. It gets the answers very quickly, and now you can see your transaction history and all the bits that you need. This pair of things that is run in the cloud on ShapeShift centralized servers, I'm calling a chain stack. A chain stack is a pair of a daemon and a database. And there's one of these pairs for every single blockchain that is supported by ShapeShift today. Now, FOXChain is a way to take that centralized data and decentralize it in a way where we're not relying on a bunch of centralized servers, and instead we're relying on all of the smaller servers that you and I run together. And through dozens of servers run by all of us, whenever we open up the app, we will connect to many different smaller servers to get the same information, and we'll be able to use our decentralized coins to trade on decentralized exchanges using a decentralized interface instead of a centralized interface. So that is what FOXChain is. It's essentially a phone book where your program, your ShapeShift app can look up the IP addresses of all of the other blockchains that are online. So that's what FOXChain is, or at least this is the dream of what FOXChain will be. Now, the last time that we spoke about this with the entire DAO, we had a couple of milestones. SCP 57 was passed, establishing the FOXChain workstream and electing me as the workstream leader. And along with that came a grant of $300,000 for research and development of a plan to build FOXChain. That's where we left off. Now, we are at a place where I think we have a big decision ahead of us. But just a quick recap on what has happened since we last left off. Of that $300,000 budget that has been allocated with SCP-57, $50,000 of that has been spent so far. That means that there's $250,000 remaining for the rest of this research and development phase. Just a reminder, all of the funds that are unused from the phase 1 budget are going to be rolled forward into phase 2. Phase 2 will be where we're actually building the thing. But before we can get to the building of the thing, we need to build a plan, and that's what phase 1 is for. Since we last left off, we've hired an actuary, Hannah. She is working to prepare spreadsheets and calculations to help us figure out how much money we're going to need to pay 50 copies of Bitcoin to run, or 100 copies, or 1,000 copies, and what if we need 80 copies of Ethereum, and et cetera, et cetera. Figuring out what the total cost is to the DAO will be vital in understanding how much money we need to keep this project running, and also vital in planning how this is going to be built. We've also hired an engineer who is currently performing R&D on some other networks to assess their suitability for inclusion in FOXChain. This engineer is a ShapeShift OG. He worked in the R&D department of ShapeShift US when ShapeShift was still a company. And in my mind, he is the perfect candidate to complete this mission. We've also hired another engineer who has been a great assistance in the planning of the protocol and tokenomics. Many lengthy conversations have been had, teasing out a variety of different tokenomics ideas and a variety of different implementation ideas to see what holds water, what doesn't, what could be a good plan and what doesn't. We've also met weekly with the Coinbase Cloud team, and they've been great. Every Tuesday we have a call with them, actually at this very time. Instead of having a meeting with the Coinbase Cloud team, we've opened it up to all of you to give this community update. With all of these research and discussion and trying to figure out the best path forward, we've identified a couple of potential solutions, and each of them have their different trade-offs. So, first, let's talk about the problem that is currently ahead of us. For the lack of better words, I'm calling this the payment and gate and key problem. Here's sort of what the issue is. Now, in October 2021, when we were first talking about the idea of FOXChain, one of the leading ideas for paying for the whole thing was via the ShapeShift DAO income. Now, if you can think of this like a giant hopper, as you can see on screen, money would come into the hopper from many, many different streams that pull in income into the ShapeShift DAO. Taxi Stake, they run a variety of Cosmos validators, which generates income for the DAO. We've got a merch store. We've got a bunch of our own DAO-owned liquidity on Rari and Olympus. We have protocol affiliate fees that are pulling in money from a variety of dexes. All of these and many more that I'm not even mentioning are the income of the ShapeShift DAO. Now, if we're going to be paying 50 Bitcoin hosts and 80 Ethereum hosts and many blockchain hosts to host a piece of the ShapeShift infrastructure, we obviously have to pay out all of these validators. As people choose to stake their Fox, they would earn yield on their delegated Fox as well. So hopefully all of the income coming into the DAO is far more than the output that is paying all these guys. And this was the general idea where we left off last October 2021. This supposes that all the income is going to be greater than the outcome at all times. Obvious questions are, well, can we afford it? And this is what the actuary is helping us identify right now. But probably a better question to ask is, should we afford it? If the system could be self-sustaining on its own without relying on the ShapeShift DAO's wider income streams, that may be a better plan because then if there is some kind of a downturn in the market and maybe our various income streams aren't yielding as much fruit, we'll still be able to weather any kind of storm. So if the Shapeshift DAO isn't going to be paying with all of its various pieces of income, who else should pay? And we started talking about, well, what if different protocols could pay? For example, Shapeshift could pay for Shapeshift users, and maybe the Olympus DAO could pay for Olympus users, and Giveth could pay for Giveth users. If there's a way for different projects to pay on behalf of all of their users, that could work. But if we're going to be having different groups pay for other people, and there would be some people who have paid and other people who have not paid, that means we're going to need a gate. This gate would allow people who have paid to go through and talk to all the FOXChain servers without restriction. And the gate would prevent anybody who hasn't paid or hasn't been paid for to talk to the FOXChain. Well, if we're going to have a gate, that means we need to have a key so that somebody can get through the gate. Well, how are we going to distribute the keys to the thousands or hundreds of thousands of users out there? So this gate and key problem, as we were going through many, many different iterations of the gate, we realized that almost all of them, actually, no, all of them for sure, have one or more user experience drawbacks. Maybe the gate takes the form of an API key. Well, how do you put the API key into your user's hands? Maybe the gate takes on the form of a digitally signed message. Well, that means that every single time you're opening up the app, you've got to sign some kind of a message with a private key. Well, maybe the gate takes the form of simply holding tokens on a balance. And as long as you have Fox tokens on your Ethereum address, or you have Osmo tokens on your Osmosis address, those systems would pay for you to come through. Well, what if you don't have those tokens on there, and now you decide that you want to buy them? Well, how many should get in? And the it became clear pretty quickly that this gate problem would cause friction. Money has to come from somewhere, though, and if all these Bitcoin servers and Ethereum servers are going to be making money by hosting it, money has to come from somewhere. So how do others do it? Well, most Cosmos SDK-based chains have inflationary tokens of one kind or another. Basically, as newly minted tokens are created by the protocol, these newly minted tokens are given to the validators that are hosting servers and all the delegators that are delegating to those validators. And this is how people earn their yield and get their money in the system. Brand new tokens are entering the system every few seconds. Shapeshift's Fox token, as it is right now, is not inflationary. There is a maximum supply of 1 billion plus LEET tokens, and there will never be any more. So because the Fox token is not inflating, we can't use this method. And instead, we are forced to look for someone else who is going to pay, whether it be the ShapeShift DAO that's going to pay or somebody else. Well, that brings us to a couple of options. One option, number one, we could continue with Fox as is, and we could continue with this path that the ShapeShift DAO will pay all the server hosts. And over time, as long as the ShapeShift DAO continues to increase the income streams it has and increase the protocol holdings that it has, it should be able to cover all these costs. Another option, which has its own pros and cons, is we could alter the ShapeShift Fox token to be inflationary. Instead of being capped at 1 billion plus LEET, we could change the tokenomics so that brand new Fox tokens enter regularly, and these new Fox tokens are what's given to all these holders. The third option, and the one that I want to explore a little bit more with you all today, is to create a completely new token for FOXChain. Instead of using the Fox token, we create something else, and it will be inflationary like other Cosmos SDK-based tokens. Now, if we have a new token, I'll call it the question mark token. This potential option, it would work very similarly to the way that FOXChain has currently been designed since late last year. Whatever the new question mark token will be, it'll be airdropped to Fox token holders and a variety of others as well. This, of course, will be determined later, and we don't want it to only be given to Fox people. We would want it to be given to many people. Who and in what ratios, we can definitely figure that out later. And these new tokens, they would be bonded by hosts so that their unchained servers could earn yield and can start serving the blockchain data that they need to. And non-technical folks like you and me, we can choose to delegate our question mark tokens and earn yield and support these validators. So this is sort of a three-pronged fork in the road in front of us. Which kind of path do we want to start walking down? With that very short set of slides, I'd like to open it up to anybody who has feedback or anybody who has even just thoughts on this. If you're willing to come up on stage and share your voice, please raise your hand here in Discord. Otherwise, I'm going to start flipping through what has been shared in the stage chat to see what I've missed and start reading your questions out loud.
Cool. I'll stall and share my thoughts while you flip through stage chat, Michael.
Thanks, Willie.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the thought that's gone into this and the outcome so far. Initially, I think a lot of us were kind of assuming that we would default to using Fox, but as we got deeper into it, it became clear that there were a lot of challenges with that, both on the technical side as well as the tokenomics side. So I really like the idea of creating a new Cosmos native token for this. I think there's a multitude of benefits, and I think that we can, for the few kind of trade-offs that there are, I think we can account for those by things like airdropping this new token to Fox holders so that existing Fox holders and the DAO included benefit from this, still have upside from this new token. But yeah, I think when you consider both paths and both options, the new token path seems pretty preferable for a number of reasons. Both that it enables us to cover the cost of operating FOXChain without having to use resources from the DAO treasury. And yeah, I think when you just look at some of the other Cosmos zones that have launched, they tend to have a pretty high staking APR, and that tokenomics model has worked out pretty well for these other Cosmos zones, even many that don't have any product or utility yet, right? It's just a vision, a zone, a high APR, and staking. And sure enough, the market has actually perceived these pretty well if you look at some of the other Cosmos zones that have launched. So I think if we took this model and actually launched a chain with very valuable utility and huge potential, I think that the market would perceive that pretty well. And that we could basically, figure out a way it buys time to figure out a way to actually make this sustainable so that the incentives to run FOXChain aren't necessarily always coming from inflation, but could actually be paid. And I know that's a model that's difficult to figure out. So I think this is a good way to buy some time to kind of prove out the core model in the network and then figure out the complicated incentive stuff down the road. So I'm a fan of the new token, but we got to figure out what the name would be. So open to any ideas from the community if we do take this route on what we should call this new token.
And specifically, I'd like to invite anyone from the Coinbase Cloud team on stage who is willing to speak on behalf of the Coinbase Cloud team. I know that the ShapeShift DAO is the first DAO that Coinbase has chosen to support. Your guidance in our weekly calls has been invaluable in shaping FOXChain as it is so far. I think the community would love to hear from the Coinbase Cloud team if any of you are willing to share.
Sure, I can hop through some like kind of general pros and cons to all options. And so like option one, continuing with FOXChain, just the Fox token. Like this, kind of the big issue here is it takes a lot of engineering work, right? We have to design this key and gate system, monitoring system to make sure only the participants that are allowed to use it, that have the permissions to use it, can use it. And so there's this big engineering like dilemma that would have to be figured out. That's kind of a con, but also if we do work that out and we make it a nice, elegant solution, it could elicit very like nice tokenomics potentially, feeding back to the Fox token. But it's a big challenge, right? It's going to take a lot more work. It also allows for like simplicity from the user end, right? You have one token rather than two tokens. Now, is that really a pro or a con? It depends on your perspective, right? Because if you're thinking like user experience, maybe it's good to have just one token, but also it might be nice to have siloed groups, right? You have a group that of token holders that are heavily involved in the ShapeShift DAO, and they're represented with their Fox token, and you have the other participants wanting to use FOXChain primarily, and they have their own token, and you have these kind of siloed off, but still very, very interconnected and able to pass value back and forth, right? And somebody asked in the chat kind of about how this brings value back to Fox token if you were to do a separate token, and like ShapeShiftDAO is going to be probably a large holder in it, and so the treasury will hold a bunch, and they'll be able to, use that to their benefit as well. As far as continuing on with the first one is the first option, which is continuing with just Fox token, right? It's a high technical effort. There's like this question of long-term sustainability and funding of it. Like how do you keep siphoning money towards something like that? How do you keep paying validators off? Which is a difficult challenge if you already are using your token for multiple other things, like in this scenario. And so some of the pros to the other option, having a separate token that's inflationary, is you can tweak and tune the tokenomics for exactly that use case, right? You don't have to adapt the Fox token tokenomics to a new use case. So you have that ability to kind of play with the tokenomics. You can also, through the initial distribution, kind of encourage certain participants. So potentially you could invite a bunch of prominent Cosmos validators, right? Some of like the people running their own servers, they're running their own hardware, which is nice to have, right, in a community, rather than like companies like us, which run on cloud service. It's also nice to have the whole gamut of validators, right? And so you could incentivize them to come over, potentially with some sort of like airdrop. It's also just like technically so much more simple. It's a tried and true method of funding validator operations, and it could open up a good, like, having this kind of like siloed ecosystem off could be kind of nice to open up, kind of keep people in their own spaces and not have this big mix of commingling, which I think would get sorted out if we were to go with the single option. But yeah, it's a delicate choice, right? But there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot more direct benefits to a inflationary token, which because you can kind of tweak and tune it to the specific use case.
Great points, Alex. I'd like to respond while also calling out Crypto Meg's question in the DAO stage with one set of answers. So if we have a gate and we have keys where some people are allowed in because they've been paid for, and other people aren't because they haven't been paid for. Um, First, it's a lot more difficult to code it this way because now you have to be constantly checking all these types of gates. But also, someone will always have to be paying into this hopper so that all of these delegators and all these validators are earning their income. ShapeShift will constantly be on the hook the ShapeShift DAO will constantly be on the hook for always putting money into this hopper. Now, maybe through agreements with other projects and other protocols, we can incentivize them to fill up the hopper as well. But we will always need to worry about who is paying for this thing. By creating a separate token, it accomplishes a couple of things. Number one, instead of the ShapeShift DAO filling the hopper with its own hard-earned money, the people who are hosting these servers and earning yield by delegating their new tokens, that new money is coming from the newly created tokens, the new supply. This is very similar to how most Cosmos-based tokens work today. The supply is constantly increasing, and those new tokens automatically end up in the hands of everybody who is delegating and validating. So we no longer need to worry about filling up that hopper. We no longer need to worry about gating it and figuring out who is allowed to use it, who is not allowed to use it, who has been paid for, who has not been paid for. So it simplifies the engineering while also simplifying the tokenomics. Now, you bring up a great point that CryptoMeg, where the original thinking towards late 2021 is let's build all this around the Fox token itself so that we can accrue new value to the Fox token itself. And if we're contemplating using a different token, that obviously won't work the same way. But depending on how that airdrop of this new token goes out, the ShapeShift treasury stands to hold a lot of those tokens. So they will definitely earn income from this new system. But this new system will be independent from all the restrictions placed on the Fox token, just as Alex pointed out, allowing for it to be tuned specifically to anybody accessing any amount of supported blockchain data without all of the governance overhead of the ShapeShift DAO and all the other overhead that the Fox token currently has, including the tokamak reactor, the Foxy yield, and all the other future things that the Fox token will have. It sort of creates a separate sub-DAO, or just a separate DAO itself, governing the hosting of data independently of ShapeShift. ShapeShift would just become one client or one consumer of this new DAO's project. With that, I'd like to hand it off to anybody else on stage. Vanessa, I see you popped up here. Do you have something to share?
Yes, hi guys. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Vanessa, go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. Apologies, I had some mic issues earlier. Yeah, big plus one to Alex's points. Over the last few weeks, Coinbase Cloud has met with the FOXChain team here. We've had a kickoff and 3 meetings. Tokenomics has really been the focus of our discussions. This is completely in line with phase 1 of our proposal. And our goal is really just to see what works based on the knowledge that we have leveraged through our experience with many fantastic Cosmos SDK protocols. And we feel really strongly about this path towards launching a new inflationary token. We've seen the success that it has yielded, many other fantastic protocols, as mentioned, and we definitely are happy to dig in and drive this forward.
Hey all. I'll just kind of jump in here and give. So I've been thinking about this a lot. Be the way to go, and the more we've had these discussions, cloud team amongst ourselves, the more I am that this is the right and most sustainable way to go. For it solves so many of the problems, both on a technical level and on the and it solves basically aligning all the various line, and that includes obviously Fox holders right now. If I'm cutting out for others, well, crap. Let me reconnect from a different place.
In the meantime, PTT, it looked like you were about to say something.
Yeah, I've kind of been talking in chat about it as well. Just about if we were to go the airdrop route, I would strongly recommend that we also target some of the larger communities on the IBC chains due to bootstrapping some of that liquidity and security for the network, especially if like I know one of the ideas was to do a one-way bridge for the airdrop, but I do think that there is some complications with that because obviously we do have Fox on multiple chains. So I'm a little concerned about that, but I do think that there's a lot of potential with the uh, doing the airdrop in the new token. So
Yeah, and not only is it like a great way to incentivize like people to come over and bring like bring validators over and stuff, but also it just builds the community out, right? This can be like a first step for a lot of people in the Cosmos ecosystem and broader IBC ecosystem to like learn FOXChain, dig into what ShapeShift is all about, and I think it's a win-win for everybody in that narrow space, right? Of thinking through that.
Do I sound better now?
Won't know until you speak full sentences, but go ahead.
All right, I think it'll be better because I'm pretty sure my computer is the issue. Anyway, what I was trying to say earlier is just that as we've thought about this, both with discussions with the Coinbase Cloud team and just amongst ourselves anyone working and talking about FOXChain among the community, I have become increasingly convinced that this is the right way to go, that it solves a slew of technical problems while also solving a slew of token economic problems over the long term and sustainability for what FOXChain will try to do. I also think it's probably the EV plus positive move for the DAO itself and for current Fox token holders, because this allows basically more value to be created in this new thing without having to detract from any of the value of the current Fox token, which it otherwise would, and potentially create this burden and potentially even selling pressure over whatever period of time we'd be bootstrapping the Fox chain and the other methods. So I'm very bullish on this front. And to your point, PTT, we just talked about, I do think one of the major benefits is that this allows us to airdrop to other Cosmos chains to help build that network effect, to do that strategically without having to do anything from like the current ShapeShift DAO treasury, which again would probably create more sell pressure on Fox itself. And the way I view it is that the Fox governance token will become, it will obviously continue to be a governance token on the ShapeShift DAO level, but it will basically become a proxy vote because of the amount of this new token that the treasury will hold over this new DAO, this new chain. So it'll honestly just give the Fox token that much more benefit, in my opinion, and that much more value and utility over the long term. So I think that's a huge benefit. And another thing we haven't really touched on is this also allows this new DAO or new chain, or kind of interchangeably, you could use either, to basically be able to be completely self-sustaining and self-reliant and not dependent on the ShapeShift DAO. While the ShapeShift DAO will likely be heavily involved and a huge stakeholder in this new FOXChain endeavor, it was always a point of weakness if it was actually reliant on the DAO, if it was basically reliant on this entity on another chain. While the ShapeShift DAO will remain, again, one of the most important stakeholders in this new thing, in my opinion, it won't be reliant, and that removes a major point of weakness, and that ultimately makes the project much stronger. So that's a little bit of my reasoning, but yeah, I'm personally strongly supportive of this option.
Comanche Fox, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Hey everybody. Yeah, my thoughts are pretty much in line. Well, one, I definitely think Kit is a great name, especially the baby fox piece. But I concur with everything that John said and what other people have said. I think you all have talked a lot about how there are technical challenges that you can kind of sidestep by going this route, and then also from what we've seen with other Cosmos-based airdrops and launches, it is a really great way to drive that network effect and get people that are already invested in the Cosmos ecosystem and already contributing and participating in different networks that have a vested stake in the ecosystem, and allowing them an easy way to come into this ecosystem and start to play in it and participate. So definitely think that this is probably the way to go from my perspective.
Thanks for those thoughts. I see there are a couple of questions floating through the ShapeShift DAO stage that I'll read aloud. One of them is a concern with taking flash loans right before the snapshot for the airdrop. Another concern is, well, what about all of the ShapeShift US former employees who have Sablier streams? Both of these concerns, in my opinion, fall under the same kind of category, and it's absolutely imperative that however this airdrop would be performed, if we are going to go down this path and we are going to airdrop tokens to whoever we're going to airdrop them to, we need to make sure that the way that they are dropped doesn't give undue influence to someone who has a flash loan or someone who has a significant amount of Fox tokens. While Fox token holders will definitely be one of the set of recipients in the airdrop, it definitely won't be the only. So I definitely agree with both of those concerns that are brought up, and we'll have to make sure that if we do go this route, the airdrop is structured properly. Another concern that I want to share with all of you who care enough about FOXChain to join this audience and think about it alongside all of us. One concern that I have with an inflationary route, if we do go with a brand new token and it is inflating, I don't believe that it should inflate forever. If the token is always going to inflate, that means that every day for lack of a better word, the purchasing power of this new token will drop steadily. Now, sure, in the short term, there might be speculative reasons why it jumps up in price or it tanks in price in the short term. But long term, it'll be no different than the US dollar is today, where it's just constantly robbing the purchasing power. This new token is going to be given to the people who are hosting ShapeShift infrastructure, the people who are providing open blockchain data to anyone in the world who needs it, not only ShapeShift. They're going to be rewarded with this new token, and it would sort of go against the principles to see the quantity of tokens in my wallet go up because I'm hosting Bitcoin data, but the value constantly going down. So I have a net break even. The whole point of this new system is to reward the people that are selflessly hosting all this blockchain data, and a constantly deflating token works against that. So what I would like to see is some kind of a emission curve, similar to how Bitcoin's emission curve goes through a halvening every approximately 4 years, or Osmosis has the concept of a thirdening. Thorchain's emission curve is more blended, whereas each individual block has slightly less than the one before it, and over time it gets less. what I think this new system would need is high inflation at first to juice the rewards and get people onboarded into the system so they are delegating their new tokens and they are validating and earning these new tokens. But over time, empower the hosts that are serving all this blockchain data, empower them to establish their own payment streams. Maybe one set of servers wants to take money from the Olympus project or directly from the ShapeShift project or some other project. Maybe another validator wants to set up a API key system where anybody can go pay $1 and get a monthly API key, or pay $10 and have access for life. By empowering each individual host with the ability to subsidize their own stuff in addition to that, over time, we can wean people off the inflation emissions and have each validator become self-sufficient in their own right. This, of course, is just an idea, and a lot of thought will need to go into both how the airdrop is performed and how the tokenomics work.
Yeah, I'll just say I'm seeing a lot of chatter in the chat, which is good, about like what we should do with various airdrop parameters if we go this route. And I just want to point out that the benefit of going this route is that those decisions can be left up to governance and we can debate and figure out what the community thinks the best parameters are. It basically gives us that blank slate to figure out what is the best way to do this. If we go in either of the other routes, we don't get that. So I just see that as a benefit. We're not going to figure out all the various parameters of what a potential airdrop and distribution are going to look like today. But if we know we're going to go this route, then that's the sort of thing that the community can decide well ahead of any sort of FOXChain launch.
Do I have any sort of timeline on once we've chosen a path forward? We are still definitely in the phase one, the research phase of FOXChain, teasing out various incentivization models, various tokenomics models. This update call that we're having now is to not only inform you of the progress that's been made so far, but also to solicit your feedback on this. Once these macro choices have been made, the very next step, and probably the most important step, in my opinion, is building out the engineering plan. Hiring experts who are very familiar with the Cosmos SDK and are very familiar with building Cosmos-based blockchains to assist us in planning out the different modules that will be needed, rough pseudocode for how these modules should be written, rough architectural diagrams that can inform the second phase. The second phase, actual software engineers will be hired and they will implement the plan. So we're right before the step where we start planning out the code for this new chain. And this is where we need to make the decision on these macro tokenomic paths.
Yeah, I'll just add on an answer to your question in the chat, PTT, that more or less the first phase of FOXChain has already been funded and is ongoing. That is this research phase that Michael is currently leading, and that we're coordinating with the Coinbase Cloud team on. For any phase 2 to go forward, that would require a governance vote, and that's the time where I feel like there would be proposed parameters of what a launch of FOXChain would look like that would hopefully be informed by various discussions in the community, and that's what would need to be voted on. So nothing can move forward without a governance vote on that next part.
Is anyone else in the audience? Do you have any feedback? Do you have any questions? Simply raise your hand and we'll bring you up here to ask your question. Otherwise, type it out and we can read it.
Hey there. I think this question is too early to be asking this question, but if it is, just let me know. This might be part of phase 2. But have you done more research on Pocket Network and how we would differentiate from that?
That's a great question. At the moment, we have one engineer who is currently attempting to marry Unchained with Pocket Network and to bring it up in a test scenario to see how that would perform. This is Highlander 2, who happens to be in the audience right now. For those of you who don't know Highlander, he worked at ShapeShift US when ShapeShift was still a company. He was the lead R&D engineer for much of his time at ShapeShift, and he is probably the best person I could think of to strap together a prototype to see how it would work. I'm excited to hear his report after his tinkering with Pocket Network is complete, because that information will be instrumental in assessing whether Pocket strategy should somehow be included in this or not.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you. Glad to hear Highlander's on it.
Hello.
Mr. Odin.
Mr. Odin here. Just to respond to Joshua's question about Pocket Network, which so it's a good amount of time looking into. There are a couple of problems I find with their approach of how they think about things. One is that they closely marry the idea of who's providing these API services, who's a validator, and so that puts a strong cap on the number of nodes that can actually provide the API service, which causes like massive, scalability problems downstream, right? If you get to a place where you have billions of API recalls happening, that network would not be able to handle it, simply put. And so you actually have to split these things about the validators, who the validators are, and who the API service provider people are. And they can be the same people in some cases. They can be different people. Doesn't really matter. But by separating these things, you can infinitely scale the number of service providers you need, and so that this thing can scale extremely well. The other problem I find with the Pocket Network's design and implementation is that everything is paid through inflation. So unless you're a validator of the network, you're just continuously, constantly getting inflated. And the worst part about that is the inflation increases with the more success of the network, right? You expect that if you buy a token, as the network becomes more successful, you earn more money, right? Or the value goes up. But in Pocket Network's design, because they inflate the entire thing, the more successful it gets. There's a close kind of marrying or coupling between inflation and success of the network, which means that it kind of counter-effective to your position as an investor or speculator on the asset. So unless you're a validator, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to actually token, just my 2 cents, just because you'll get inflated to in oblivion.
Thank you very much for sharing your perspective. While I personally share all of your opinions on the Pocket Network, I recognize that I haven't been a software engineer for about 10 years now. And while that is how I got started in my career, and I definitely have a lot of roots in software engineering, these types of questions, in my opinion, are far better answered by people who are experts in this, in the current world's language, in today's languages. That's one of the reasons why in this R&D phase, we're funding Highlander's research into the Pocket Network. Rather than looking at just the theory of how it appears to work on paper, we want to see how it actually works in code. According to one of the Pocket Network developers that I spoke with earlier this year, they believed that Unchained could be wrapped in the Pocket Network in about 1 weekend's worth of work, and it would be up and running online and serving data. I thought that was an incredible claim. And if it is only going to be a weekend worth of work for someone who's intimately familiar with the Pocket Network, it definitely seems worthwhile to allocate some portion of the research budget to teasing that out and learning the actual pros and cons of doing that. And that's exactly what Highlander will be doing, and I can't wait to hear the results of his work. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour. We've got 4.5 minutes left. I just want to say that so far, with all the work that has gone into FOXChain to date, one of the things that has surprised me the most is just how difficult it is to crack this nut. Time and time again, people who I've been talking to, either on the Coinbase Cloud calls or in the various other community discussions here on Discord, when we run into a problem, myself or they would jerk their knee and say, "Oh, well, that's easy. This is solved that way. It's always been solved that way." But once you start digging into it, you realize just how centralized that one way is. And if we're going to be building a decentralized way of hosting the same data, suddenly it becomes very difficult. Examples include, payment gateways. If you're hosting everything on a server and you are the one who is issuing all the API keys, it's trivial for you to look up and say, yeah, this person paid. Nope, that person didn't. Every system we use, from the app stores on our mobile devices to everything, works this way. The moment you try to decentralize it, suddenly you have to sort of throw everything out and start from scratch. And the number of times that for lack of a better word, the current thinking or the current design, the number of times that the current design has changed and been tweaked as we run into yet another problem that means that this one won't work, or yet another problem that way won't work. When I started down this path in the fall of 2021, I did not anticipate just how many roadblocks and dead ends we would run into, having to completely redesign what we had settled on just last week. It's been incredibly fun trying to tease out all these problems and working alongside such incredibly smart people to help game theory things out, 5 steps down the road. I'm finding this personally rewarding because I love puzzles and I love trying to solve them. But ultimately, the beneficiary of all this is going to be not only every user in ShapeShift, every single one of you, but everybody in the world who has wanted to work on some kind of a blockchain program, but they didn't have the blockchain data right beside them. They don't have the money to pay for Infura or AWS. They don't have an extra computer to spin up a full node and query it in their tiny dorm room. This is essentially a decentralized gift to the world, and I'm incredibly empowered, or I feel incredibly empowered working on it.
I would like to just thank you, Michael, for taking the leadership on this and moving this forward, and also the Coinbase Cloud team for all the amazing collaboration so far that I'm sure will continue. It has been great to participate in some of that and just kind of watch as an observer. And I couldn't be more excited for where this is going.
Yeah, plus one on Coinbase Cloud. They've been incredibly helpful in keeping this project on track and asking questions from different perspectives that are absolutely necessary. Thank you, everyone on the Coinbase Cloud team.
Yeah, it's a really fun project. It's really fun to be working on this.
Yes, and we're excited to see where this partnership will evolve to.
Well, thanks everyone. If you have any further questions about FOXChain, just pop into the FOXChain channel. It's a little bit lower down on your channel list, and ask in there. Until next time.
Thanks, everybody. GM.
GM.